Jumping straight into some more quarterback talk on today's show, we're going to look at the Seattle Seahawks starting quarterback Geno Smith and what his situation is looking like with Seattle, not only heading into 2024, but also in years afterwards, because Geno is now 1 year into that 3-year contract extension that he got from the Seahawks after a very impressive 2022. You go back and you look at the stats and the fact that he made it into the playoffs with the Seahawks, with a squad or just a team overall that many didn't pencil in as being playoff caliber. The fact that Geno played up to that level and got them into the dance is pretty noteworthy. So, yes, he deserved the extension. I think he did. I think that's right to say. That's factual to say that Geno deserved that extension. But afterwards, following it up by two, I think 9 and 8 seasons, missing out on the playoffs, and now you're left in a spot where Pete Carroll is now gone. You're sort of starting a new era with Mike Macdonald coming over from the Baltimore Ravens, and you don't really know where this quarterback situation really stands because both Geno Smith and Seattle are now heading into this weird area where they already restructured Geno's contract during this offseason, and it still lacks some security and some guarantees in those first 2 years. According to Mike Garafolo, Geno Smith, because of the lack of that security and guarantees, he approached the Seattle Seahawks about a new contract at some point in the near future. Geno is signed through 2025 with this 3-year deal that he's on, but Seattle could still move on from him after this year with only a cap charge of $13.5 million. So it's not too expensive where they feel the need to not be able to move on from Geno Smith. So it feels like to me, the way that this is going, the way that the contract was set up, that maybe it's almost, dare I say, irrelevant how Geno Smith plays this year in sort of a prove-it year, because I just feel like it's not really giving the signs that the Seahawks are too eager to extend him right now, especially after restructuring his deal and the lack of security and guarantees throughout the first 2 years. Because on that, it already isn't, painting a pretty optimistic picture that Geno could be there, but also NFL Network's Mike Garafolo also talked about it and where he sees this situation going. He mentioned it in just this statement here. He said, "They've talked about it. They've tried to talk about it. I know that. That's something that's been broached this offseason. So that could be something that gets done before week 1 and is addressed by the team." But he also mentioned afterwards that it doesn't appear imminent that the Seattle Seahawks, from their point of view, feel that this is something that needs to happen. So that being the case, Geno obviously wanting that restructuring or looking for a new deal, there comes some doubt with that, obviously. Not only are you following it after 2 9 and 8 seasons, which, isn't a losing season, but also I think when you have 500 seasons, the last thing you want to do is have the exact same record from last year where you were 500. And if that doesn't scream no improvement or just staying the same, I don't know what does. After being 9 and 8 two seasons in a row, you get rid of Pete Carroll, which something needed to happen. I guess I didn't think it would be that, but regardless, they made a move to try and create some change. And you bring in Mike Macdonald, which I think is a good hire. I really like him and what he did with the Ravens defense last year, how dominant they were. I think he could bring that approach here to Seattle with some good players on the defensive side of the ball. Hopefully he can make that unit perhaps the identity of this team and not put so much pressure on Geno and the offense if that defense is keeping the teams to under 19 or 18 points per game. I think that's pretty manageable. But sticking to Geno Smith here and just his situation and why I almost feel it is irrelevant that this situation about maybe approaching the Seahawks about a contract extension is almost just like a last-ditch effort for Geno Smith, because I'm not feeling too great about Geno sticking with the Seahawks past this year for a couple of reasons. One of them being that Geno is already 33. So in any way, if you're looking for a contract extension or just a new contract in general, you want more guarantees, right? But to me, that doesn't make too much sense for the Seahawks, because if you're going to give Geno Smith guaranteed money, you'd want him to be your quarterback, or you want to feel good about him being your quarterback for the next couple of years, not just one more year, and still being able to move on from him after 2024. So if you're talking about a contract extension at any point in these negotiations, to me, I would want additional years to have any quarterback as my quarterback going forward. But with Geno already 33, I don't think he's the long-term answer for the Seahawks. And I think this year might just be the last year we see him at starting level capacity before he starts to dip a little bit. So if you're not going to add years onto that because of Geno's age and the doubts about his playing ability, I'm not going to give him more guaranteed money if I'm still just going to move on from him after 2024, or if that's the plan at the beginning of this entire thing. I'm not going to give him more guarantees and more additional years if I don't really feel confident in him being my starter for the foreseeable future. And also with a new head coach, I always say it, with Jonathan Gannon in Arizona at the time, or usually when you're bringing in a new quarterback, just in any situation, I feel like those quarterbacks typically like to bring in their guys. They don't usually like to inherit quarterbacks, especially if they're not generational, special ability kind of players, those one-of-one kind of guys in certain scenarios. Like with Trevor and Urban Meyer in that situation, obviously you knew Trevor was the guy, the generational talent, and you're going to inherit a guy like that, and you sort of know that it was the bad coaching and all that extra stuff he did off the field as to why you feel okay if you're a new head coach coming in there trying to get all those bad habits out of Trevor and trying to develop him in the next couple of years. You know, that's what Doug Peterson did, and now Trevor is being paid like one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and he certainly has improved since then. But inheriting a guy that's, you know, in his 30s already, usually to me that screams like you're going to need a new quarterback sooner rather than later. With Cam Newton and the Patriots is another example when they drafted Mac Jones as well. So it always feels like this is just a requirement for a new head coach to really bring in his ideas to what he wants this team to look like. And if that quarterback doesn't fit that idea or their scheme, they're going to move on from him. So that's one thing. That's one reason where I don't think Geno is going to stick around too well. And also the idea of bringing in Sam Howell as well. At the time when people saw it, if people saw it, it didn't really, bat an eye too much. Sam Howell signs with the Seahawks. Great. He's going to be the backup probably, like whatever. But the idea of bringing Sam Howell in, a guy that has starting level experience, maybe not good, maybe awful if you think that, but he did start in the NFL. He has that experience, so it wouldn't be too much of a shock for him. The fact that they brought him in gives me more leeway that they could move on from Geno Smith because you move on from him, and now you can have Sam Howell in there on the last year of his rookie deal, knowing that he is going to be that bridge quarterback, that he gives you sort of a period where you can start him if you don't find anybody else to, increase the level at the quarterback position. You feel all right with having Sam Howell in there as your guy. In that period of having Sam Howell in there, you improve on the rest of the team. You make sure you get better on the offensive line. You bring in more skill-based position players if you feel that's a need. You improve the defense even more. And then once that last year of the rookie contract is up for Sam Howell, then you can start to look into the quarterback position, maybe drafting a guy, maybe signing somebody in free agency. Dak is the quarterback that, pops in my mind right away, but I think that's a little bit out of the pay grade for the Seattle Seahawks. I don't know if they can afford Dak at this point in time, so maybe not someone like him, but I don't know. Maybe drafting somebody is always a good opportunity if you're that high up in the draft, or a guy like Mac Jones, someone that I don't really feel like he's a backup quarterback. I feel like with how high he was drafted in the seasons that he had at Alabama, I feel like he's just needing of another opportunity. So the Seahawks maybe could be that chance for him. Also, Trey Lance, if you really want to explore those other lanes, if it doesn't work out with the Dallas Cowboys, maybe you bring him in and you could potentially get something out of him. You don't really know what the quarterback market is going to be each and every year, but those are just some names that pop into my mind if the Seahawks are looking for alternatives after Geno Smith, maybe after Sam Howell. But in that time period where you move on from Geno Smith, say, after 2024. You have Sam for about a year, and then in that time, you get better, improving the rest of the cast around your next future quarterback. And then once you do get that guy in there, ideally the one that you want it to be, the rest of the team isn't lacking in any major department where it's not so wise to go draft a quarterback. You improve the rest of the team, make sure you're over-prepared for a rookie quarterback, and that way it makes the transition a lot smoother, almost like Caleb Williams this year, obviously, and the Bears. You can even throw C.J. Stroud in there last year with the Houston Texans. Those are ideally what you wanted to happen, but it's obviously a lot harder done than just said. So we're going to keep an eye on that. I just don't see an extension happening for Geno after they restructured this year to alleviate some of their cap space. It doesn't scream that they're just going to use a good amount of it if they're just going to extend Geno afterwards. So that's why I started this whole thing with saying that it's almost irrelevant, just because I think the writing is pretty much on the wall for Geno Smith, unfortunately. But it's not like he's just going to retire and that's going to be the end of it. Maybe it's a prove-it year in a way that it's a prove-it year to some other team. If another team is needing his services, he could go somewhere else if he performs very well this year with the Seattle Seahawks. But I just think the Seahawks and Geno are up on their marriage here, and I think a divorce is in store after 2024. That's just how I'm feeling. Let me know what you guys think about that and Geno's chances of continuing to be the starter in maybe 2025 for the Seahawks. But with that being the case now, we're going to go to our last break of the show, and when we return, we're going to talk about some more quarterbacks in Pittsburgh. Russell Wilson making his debut. Justin Fields also exciting a lot of the fan base with how he played. And what does this mean for the Steelers offense after overall a bad performance? We're going to get into that in just a few seconds.